Have you had enough of this Juneteenth bullshit? I mean, the whole Civil War thing was like a big stupid mess, right? I mean, you had 1 million white people die to free 8 million slaves. Now, you know, white people are really stupid. White people are truly stupid to actually go along with that bullshit, right? I mean, think about that for a second. 8 million slaves uh, and 1 million white men died for them. Why couldn't the slaves rebel themselves? Now, Brazil had a much larger slave population. I don't know what you know, but they were freed in 1880, right? Just a few without a civil war. The Russians had serfs, which is even worse than slavery. They had about almost like 35 million serfs. They were freed eventually in the middle of the 19th century. No civil war. And you have this blacks and this whites. But I mean, I really blame the whites for bringing this shit up. Uh, are still bringing this shit back, this nonsense Civil War bullshit, which should be, buried in a pile of historical trash. Really, uh, is the worst mistake this country ever made, trying to free the slave. They should have freed the slaves, yeah, put them on a barge somewhere and take them back to Africa. But so this is like living in the past lane. We're obsessed with this. Here, they always talk about history. Let me say one thing: blacks don't have a history. Blacks never had a history. The Shelby Steele is right. The best that can one say about slavery or black history is that black history begins with slavery. But they didn't have a history. Blacks lived in Africa for 100,000 years. They didn't contribute squat to anything. They lived in mud huts, dung huts. They had no writings. They didn't even invented the wheel, just like the American Indians. They didn't even have a concept of the wheel. Just think, I mean, not even the Aztec, the Mayans, and the Incas, which were supposed to be the civilization, they were not. They were just slaughtering each other left and right. The American Indians, by the way, they were just slaughtering it. They spent uh, centuries slaughtering each other, and now the ideology is, well, they lived in with nature. They lived in comfort with nature. They lived uh, along with nature. Just yeah, that's bullshit. Bullshit. The level of savagery was incredible. They lived in this Neolithic level. I mean, even worse than the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age was like the time of the Iliad and the Odyssey. When Achilles and Hector and uh, uh, they were fighting for Troy. And Moses was crossing uh, the Sinai. That's the Bronze Age. The American Indians had nothing like that. I mean, they had zero technology. They would drag their themselves around in this wooden something. But I digress. So the idea that they have a history, it's not true. They don't have a history. They celebrate this holiday now. Now they want to add more holiday like this Juneteenth bullshit. They want to add another one on top of that other nobody by the name of Martin Luther King, a complete nobody. If it wasn't for white liberals, this guy would be less than a footnote in the history of the world. Less than a footnote. If Martin Luther King, who plagiarized everything, by the way, he plagiarized even his speeches, even his best speeches, like the "I Have a Dream" speech, was plagiarized. Look it up, plagiarized. Martin Luther King plagiarized speeches. He went to divinity school and he got his doctor in divinity, which is really more like a master's degree. He was in Atlanta and they told him that he just wasn't a good student. He could never even get a degree in Doctor of Divinity because he was dumb. Martin Luther King was a dumb guy. So what did the people in Atlanta do? They sent him up to Boston to study up in Boston for his divinity degree because they knew that the liberal white Northeastern were going to give him a pass. So he got a pass. And so they gave him the Doctor of Divinity. So people call him a doctor, which is bullshit. He's not a doctor. He's a Doctor of Divinity, which is like a master's degree. And then they found out later on that he actually plagiarized his doctor thesis. He plagiarized even that. So it's like you look. It's like this are a race of people that contribute. Absolutely, I mean they cannot even do good for themselves. They just bring nothing but trouble and nothing but heartache to civilized white people. I mean this is a race that contributes nothing but rape, murder, brutality. I mean look at all those white people being brutalized. They talk about George Floyd, who's a nobody criminal, and this other guy, Rashid Brooks, who's another criminal, who was out of prison, by the way, because of COVID. I don't know whether you know. All this worthless, and they celebrate them as though like they were like heroes. They're nobodies. They're criminals. The world is better off without them. They have no history. The whole race has no history. And we celebrate this nobodies like they were heroes. Try to figure that one out. Living in the past lane, that's what they want to do. They want to live in the past lane, still blabbing about something that they know absolutely nothing about, the Civil War and racism and Tulsa. Get the hell out of here.